Hi everyone, welcome back. In our last video we looked at alignment, we installed the tip top, and we learned how to wrap a guide. In this video we're going to just do a couple additional things. We're going to talk about ferrule wraps, what they're for, how long they should be, and we're going to do a demonstration on how to get as close to the edge as possible. We're also going to talk briefly about wrapping stripping guides. It's going to be the last guide on the rod closest to the grip, and depending on the stripping guide you're using, sometimes they can be a little challenging because the feet don't tend to be as small as a snake guide or a single foot guide. So we're going to give you a couple techniques for how to get over the top of that, that foot starting out. And the last thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about installing a hook keeper and then starting a little bit of thread in front of the winding check, why we do that, why it's important, and then just we're going to install the hook keeper right there as well. And that's going to be it for this video. It's going to be pretty short. In the next video we're going to walk you through prepping the wraps for rod finish, and then we're actually going to finish a few wraps for you so you can see how that's done. But now we're going to switch over to a close-up so you can... Okay, we're back. I've got a rod section in front of me, and here's the female ferrule. We're going to reinforce this section. It gets a lot of stress when casting, and it's always a good idea to do some sort of ferrule wrap. Now, in the event that you have a guide placement, maybe your guide ends up like right here, it's fine to incorporate that guide wrap right into the ferrule wrap. It's going to serve the same function. As far as how long a ferrule wrap should be, it's kind of up to you, but the standard is 1.5 times the diameter of the blank. So in this case, it's going to be roughly, I don't know, about 1/2 inch long, maybe a little bit less. But again, that's just kind of a rough rule to go by. You can make them longer or shorter, depending on the look you're going for. So we're going to start this just like we wrapped a guide. Over the top, under where they cross, we're going to connect our thread by just crossing it over a couple times. 2-3 times and you should be on. And then we're just going to wrap it just as though there were a guide foot there. Just like that, and now we're to the point where we can cut our tag in. So just like before, we're going to hold that perpendicular to the blank and bring our razor blade in and just slice that off. Make sure you keep plenty of these tag ends around. You don't want to be kind of searching for one when we get to the end of this ferrule, because things are going to be pretty close to the edge. So now we're just going to rotate through. I'm going to stop, pack as we go. Closing up, excuse me, any gaps along the way. You can see a few gaps there, and that's fine. They'll disappear here in a second. Alright, starting to creep up on the end of this ferrule. We'll do a few more wraps and then we're just going to insert a pull loop. So we'll do another pack here. We're going to put in a pull loop. time that loop is going to be facing the open end of the ferrule. Just like that. You can see it right there. Now from here on out, you'll want to be packing pretty much all the time because we're not going to have space to do kind of a final pack. So we're going to pack as we go. Try to keep your thread even with the edges of that ferrule too. Sometimes ferrules aren't cut perfectly across, so you want to make sure you kind of have a nice even edge on the end. And get as close as you can. And again, pack as you go. That's about as close as I'm going to get right now. One thing you can do, especially if you're using dark thread, well, hang on, I'm going to tie this off. We'll put our thumb on there again, very carefully now, and you put it kind of close to the pull loop, because what we want to do is secure that area. So we've got our thumb on there. Excuse me. We cut our thread, and we're going to come through that pull loop. Just like that. And we're going to hold that thread perpendicular to the rest of the wrap. And then we're going to grab those two tag ends, and just like before, we're going to pull it through. Just like that. Now you can do a final pack here, and what you're looking for is for it to be nice and even on the end. Just like that. And then we'll cut our tag in. One thing you can do, especially if you're using dark thread like this, if you really want to get rid of any line on the end there, if you have a Sharpie that's the same color or roughly the same color as your thread, you can just color the end of that blank, and then you'll have a perfectly dark area along the whole thing. That's pretty much it for ferrules. Again, usually only wrap on graphite rods at least, the female ferrules, and again 1.5 times the diameter of the rod section, and you should be all set. All right, thanks. Okay, we're back. We're going to talk about how to wrap a stripping guide. I'm also going to do a metallic trim band on this one to show you a couple technique for how those can be done. So again, just like our snake guide, we have it taped on here. I'm also going to show you a technique for sometimes making the transition from the blank up the foot of these guides can be a little tricky because they're a little larger than snake guides, and there can be a bump there that the thread doesn't want to climb up too easily. So I'll show you how to deal with that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut a piece of metallic thread. In this case, I'm using a black and silver twist, and we are going to tape it parallel to the blank with the long end of that piece on the side that we're wrapping. I'll show you that in a moment. So I've just kind of taped it off there onto the blank, and so this piece is going to be, this side's going to be the long side. Just give yourself 4 or 5 inches or so, and then hold it parallel to the blank, and just like the seat, you can see it running along the blank, and then give yourself a little space, and then we're just going to tape it off just like that so that it's out of our way for the moment. So then back to our guide. Just like with a snake guide, we're going to wrap it the same way to start off. Space it, we go under. Where they cross, we rotate it toward ourselves and overlap that thread. We come under, overlap. I'm going to do 3 because this blank's a little slippery. And there we are, just like that. Now we're on the blank. We're going to go right over top of that metallic thread. We're just going to pretend like it's not even there for the moment. So now we're coming up to that guide foot.
And we're going to assume that that guide foot's giving us a little bit of grief when it comes to climbing up the foot. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our thread in our fingers and we're going to pull it right up on top of that guide, leaving a nice gap. You'll see that gap when we come around the other side here. You can see it right there. And what we're going to do here is we're going to build up a few thread wraps, maybe 4 or 5, and when we get those in place, then we're going to gently push them over the top of that guide foot, and they're just going to completely cover it. So we've got, I think, 2 there. There's 3. We're still keeping our gap. This metallic thread can be kind of a pain because it wants to kind of flip around on you. Just kind of push it out of the way as you go. So we're getting a nice mound there, and you can see it's just starting to close itself right up. It just wants to travel down that guide foot, and then in the rest of it, with your burnishing tool or your fingernail, we're just going to close those gaps up. And now, even though this guide foot was not perfect on the end, we've got a really smooth transition from the blank up the foot, and we have no gaps. So now that we're on, we'll cut our tag end. You can really do that anytime you want. Stopping to pack. And then we would just continue that guide. I'm going to tie it off a minute so I can show you the trim wrap. But you'll tie it off exactly like you would a snake guide. We're going to insert our pull loop. And we're going to go over top of it a few times. Everything nice and packed together. Cut it. Insert it through just like that. Now we're tied off. We'll pack that a little bit and we'll cut that trim band so it's not in our way when we do the trim wrap, or the trim wrap. Okay. So now we've got, we can take the tape off of this metallic thread on the side that we're wrapping on. And we're going to install a pull loop right away because we don't want this to be a big wrap. It's going to be a fairly small one. We're going to face it away from the guide. You can see it in place there. Then take that metallic wrap and pull it right close to the guide, over top of that trim of that pull loop, and then just holding it in your hand for tension. We're going to go around 3 or 4 times. And then we're going to put it through our pull loop. Rotate that so you can see it a little bit. Grab those loose ends of the pull loop and pull the tag end of that metallic thread through before you cut it. It's always a good idea to pack it in place. And grab your razor blade, very carefully laying it on your guide wrap. Cut that metallic thread. Now, one thing you'll notice here, we still have this metallic thread running the other way. So before you finish this main wrap, when you're maybe halfway through, go ahead and cut that metallic thread. Just like that. and then wrap right over top of it. You can see just a little tag end of that thread, and that's not a big deal because you're going to have that covered with the rest of the main wrap. If you don't do that, then what's going to happen is you're going to have a gap and you're going to have a little piece of metallic thread showing through the other side. And then for the other side, you just pull the tape off and we'll do the exact same thing. Try to keep the number of wraps for the trim wrap the same, so you don't want like 5 on this side and like 3 on this side, so you want 3 and 3. But that's pretty much it. We're going to move now to wrapping the winding check. The last wrap I'm going to show you is just in front of our grip. So we've installed the winding check. Basically you just put a couple drops of super glue or epoxy on the blank, maybe a 1/16 inch up or so from the cork grip, and then just slide it into place. And once that dries, it's going to be pretty secure. So the reason we're going to put a little thread here is because later on when we put thread finish on the guide wraps, we're also going to put a little on this area. And what that's going to do is make sure we get a watertight seal when we transition from the blank to the grip, because we don't want any water getting underneath that grip as you actually fish the rod. Another option that we have here, I'm not going to put one on this rod, and these tend to be, I don't know, it's personal preference if you use one or not, but a hook keeper, if you want to use one, you'll tape it on just like a guide, and then just wrap right up on top of that, just like a normal snake guide. So what I like to do when wrapping a winding check is I will actually start right up next to the check. And the reason I do that is so that I can get a really tight seal or like transition from the thread to the check. So again, we're going to come under. I'm using a metallic thread here, so it's going to be a little slippery. Come under, cross that over, pack everything into place. You can see it slips just a little bit, so it's not a bad idea to do a third wrap just to make sure that that's not going anywhere. There we go. Good. So then as you pack that thread, you can actually pack it, if you have room, right under that winding check. Now depending on the size of your blank, you may or may not have much room there, but it's never going to hurt to pack it actually under there, or right up to it if you can. And got our tag end here. Just like that. And if we were going to use a winding check, a hook keeper, we just put it in place now and wrap right on top of it, and then just tie off like normal. You don't have to have anything fancy here, and you don't have to use a hook keeper at all. But again, it's a good idea to use a little bit of thread up here, just so that we can put some thread finish on top of it to seal up this transition. But that's pretty much it for wrapping. In the next video, we're going to prep our wraps, and then we're going to apply thread finish. All right, thank you.